All right, so now we're going to move on to the second video of section D, and this will be the last video that we have until our next quiz, but it's video 2 of section D. All right, so now we are still going to be dealing with similarities, but what our goals or objectives, what you need to be able to do at the end of this video is you need to be able to use similar triangles now or similarity statements. So I will give you similar triangles or similarity statements to solve for missing sides or variables of a triangle. So it's very similar to what we were just doing in the last sections, the last quiz that we did with congruent triangles. First, we learned how to determine if triangles are congruent, and then we use congruency statements to then solve for missing sides of triangles. So we can do the exact same thing with similar triangles. You're going to see, though, there is a slight difference that we need to do versus when we're doing congruent triangles. We're going to go through that now, but ultimately it's just, can you read a similarity statement? Or in one case, can you look at a triangle and identify what sides are corresponding? All right, so for this one, we don't have this missing side, all right? So it's just question mark. So that means we want to solve for this entire missing side. So what I will do now is I'm going to look and say, well, this is side RP. Well, RP is my first and third, and I know it corresponds with my first and third. Now, remember, with similar triangles, this is different than what we were just doing with our congruent triangles. With congruent triangles, we said that the ones that corresponded were equal. In similar triangles, we need to create ratios because we know that the ratios are equal. So it doesn't matter which one you start with. I'm going to start with this bottom triangle and work my way up to the top one every single time. So that means I'm going to put PR over top of PU. All right, then I'm going to look and see. I just talked about this side. Now I have these sides left. So I have VP and I have PQ. Those are the only sides that they give me any information. So I can't use RQ or VU at all because they don't give me anything about it. All right, so now since I started with this bottom triangle and I made my ratio to the top one, I need to do the same thing. So I need to start with this side, that is PQ. So this is going to be equal to PQ over top of, and this is PV because they correspond. So remember, when we are doing similarity, we're going to create ratios that are equal, or what these are called are proportions. And now we're just going to substitute in. Well, I'm going to leave or substitute PR with a question mark. You can leave it as PR if you want. PU is equal to 11, so over 11 is equal to PQ, which is 54, over top of PV, which is 9. All right, now at this point, we have already started to do these. This is not anything new. You should know how to solve these now. All right, remember, when we have two ratios or two fractions equal to each other, we can simply just cross multiply. So we get 9 times the question mark is equal to 54 times 11, and 54 times 11 is equal to 594. So now we can do 9 question mark is equal to 594, and we can divide each side by 9 because we want to isolate that question mark. I probably should use PR instead next time. And when we divide 594 by 9, it is equal to 66. So that means this missing side is 66 units long. So in here, instead of writing a question mark, we can say that this is 66. And if we want to check our work, we can put 11 over 66 and see how does it reduce? How does it simplify? And same thing with 9 over 54. Now, some of you guys may be saying, well, Mr. Spelman, these are really large numbers. How are we going to do this? Well, what we could have done is when we had this fraction here, you can reduce your fraction if you want. We know 9 goes into 54 6 times, so I can then have 6 over 1 instead of 54 over 9. And now I can cross multiply, and then this gives me that my question mark is equal to 66. You see, it's the same answer. It's just your call. Some people may not want to do the simplification first because they might be afraid that they'll mess it up. Some people want to leave the numbers as is, and then they'll just off to the side, multiply it out using their multiplication methods, but it's your call. All right, now, if I ask you to solve for a missing side, that is implying that we know the triangles are similar. All right, when I'm telling you solve for the missing side, I am indirectly also telling you it's guaranteed that these triangles are similar. In the problem before, I gave you the similarity statement, but in some cases, we don't need to give you a similarity statement because in this case, it's guaranteed to know which sides correspond with which, right? And when it's two triangles that one is completely engulfed in the other, if you see here is our one triangle and here is our other, then the sides that are both on the left have to correspond. So that means this long side 40 has to correspond with this side 8. We can't flip these triangles around, otherwise we wouldn't be congruent or similar. And this long side PR has to correspond with this long side RH or 10. And then this back part has to correspond with this back part, right? So it guarantees that these sides are going to be corresponding with each other. So you don't necessarily need a similarity statement for this. And we know that it has to be similar. There's no way that it can't be when we're solving for the missing side, right? So what we need to do now is figure out what side does our question mark on. So it's on this big side PR. So I know PR, what does that correspond with? Well, PR corresponded with, let me see, I use blue. PR corresponded with this HR. And now it doesn't matter which one I pick, right? I could pick any of the other ones. Since I noticed that this 30 is shorter than this 40, I'm just going to go ahead and use this. And since I used my bigger triangle, PR first, I need to make sure that this is in my numerator next time as well. PQ over top of this side GH. All right, the one thing you have to make sure is that you are staying consistent. This was the bigger triangle, so our bigger triangle needs to be on the top. This was our smaller triangle, so our smaller triangle needs to be on the bottom. All right, now let's go ahead and plug in what we know. Well, PR, I'm going to leave as PR. That's what we're solving for. Over top of HR is 10, and that is equal to PQ, which is 30, over top of 6. All right, just to make this a little bit easier, let's go ahead and reduce this fraction. So let's write this over here. So PR over 10 is equal to, well, 30 over 6 reduces to 5 over 1. And now we can just go ahead and cross multiply. PR is then equal to 50 units. All right, so I know that this has to be 50. If you didn't simplify first and you cross multiply to 10 and 30, that is fine as well. All right, now for the next couple of questions, we're going to be solving for X. It's the exact same thing. All right, now remember, once we are getting the similarity statement, we are then going to use this. When the triangles are separated, we can't just look at them and say, okay, we're going to say that ML corresponds with FE. We have to go by the actual similarity statement. So I know that X is part of ML. So that means I'm going to look and see, well, what does ML correspond with? It corresponds with EF. So even though I just guessed it, I didn't know for sure. I have to use a similarity statement. So I'm going to go with the top triangle, ML, over top of EF. All right, I know that they correspond, so they create a ratio. Then it's going to be equal to, well, the other side I'm given is this MN. So I'm going to say, okay, well, what does MN correspond with? And MN corresponds with DE. Well, we know it has to correspond with this other side, because if I gave you this number for something else, then you couldn't solve it. But I would check your work, though, just to make sure that this question is actually something that you can solve. So over DE. Now we're just going to substitute what we know. Well, ML is 8x plus 2. EF is 30. MN is 60. And DE is 36. All right, what I would suggest that you do is you simplify this fraction. You don't have to, but otherwise you're going to be dealing with some really large numbers. So it'll be 8x plus 2 over 30 is equal to, well, 6 goes into both of these. 6 goes in this, so it'll be 10 over 6, and then this still reduces. 2 goes into this, 5 over 3. So this reduces to 5 over 3, because 12 goes into 60 and 12 goes into 36. All right, now once we do this, we will cross multiply. Now remember, this is something that we did earlier in the year. When we have a binomial in our numerator, it is very important that you put it into parentheses, because we need to make sure that we distribute that 3 in. It'll be 5 times 30. All right, so now we will distribute this in. So we will then get 24x plus 6 is equal to 5 times 30 is 150. All right, then we will subtract the 6 from both sides. So I will then get 24x is equal to 144. And then I will do both sides divided by 24. So divide this by 24 and divide this by 24. So x is then equal to 6. Right, and then we're done. So when you're trying to solve for x, nothing changes with the problems that we were just doing. It's still going to be the exact same thing, where we need to create our similarity ratios, set them equal, and then solve. The only problem is, now that you're solving for x, most likely you're going to have to remember that you need to distribute this number into our binomial, because both the 8x and the 2 are being multiplied by that 30. All right, and then the last question for this video, once again, we're given a similarity statement. I will highlight and look and say, well, okay, well, X is part of this FH. So FH, it corresponds with RP. So I know that these two correspond. So I will say FH. Let me just write this a little bit higher since I was running out of space for the last one. So I will then say FH over RP. And then I know it's going to correspond with, well, the other side I'm given is this FG. So FG has to correspond with the other side, but let's just make sure RQ it does. So then it'll be RQ. Now we're going to substitute in what we know. So it is 12x plus 3 over top of RP, which is 27, is then equal to FG, which is 91, over top of RQ, which is 39. All right. So in these, 13 goes into both of these. 13 goes into 91 7 times, and 13 goes into 39 3 times. So I can then do 12x plus 3 over 27 is equal to 7 because 13 goes into 91 7 times, over 3 because 13 goes into 39 3 times. Then I will cross multiply. So now I'm going to write it up here. I will get 3 times 12x plus 3 is equal to 27 times 7. And 27 times 7 is equal to 189. And now I will distribute this 3 in. So I will then get 36x plus 9. Now I'm going to subtract both sides by 9. And now I get 36x is equal to 180. And then I will go ahead and divide each side by 36. And x is then equal to 5. All right, and that is it. So when you are doing this, you just need to make sure that you are reading your similarity statement, just like we needed to read our congruency statement. It's very similar in those ways, except for now we're not just setting things equal, but we need to create these proportions, which are ratios set equal to each other.